Are y'all ready to roll? Let's go.
This week in politicking, we are following a very important story. This is a story that went viral for us last week, and it is the story of two twins in Georgia who mysteriously went missing and then came up dead. Some say it's a suicide. Others have questions about what happened to these young men. And we are following this heartbreaking tragedy of the Lewis twins. For those who may be unfamiliar with this story, and if you are, please, please, please do everything in your power to become familiar, because stories about the deaths of Black people don't get nearly enough mainstream media attention. So we in the Black media are making sure you know about this story. But here it is. 19-year-old Georgia Qaazir and Naadir Lewis left to the airport and never made it home ever again. Their bodies were found 90 miles away in the Georgia mountains, and their disappearance and ultimate death was labeled first a murder-suicide, then upgraded to double suicide. Here with us today is attorney Gerald Griggs. He works with the Georgia chapter of the NAACP, and he is representing the Lewis family. He's digging his heels in and asking the tough questions that often law enforcement won't ask. And he's forcing the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to be transparent in their investigation. Before we welcome Gerald to the show, let's see what he's had to say about the twins and the disappearance.
We've been here before, many times in many different counties all throughout Georgia when there's a mysterious death. So we stand here for the twins demanding the same thing we demanded for Ahmaud Arbery and others. A thorough, complete, and full independent investigation. Because we find it very hard to believe that individuals that resided in Gwinnett County would somehow end up in Towns County on a mountain they knew nothing about and commit suicide. We've been here way too many times. So in the 116 years that the NAACP has responded to lynchings, we know what a lynching looks like, we know what it smells like, we know what a cover-up starts out like. If it truly was a suicide, be transparent. Release all the information. Let independent investigators determine what happened. But if it's a cover-up, keep covering up, because the eyes of the world are on this case.
We are so honored today to welcome famed civil rights attorney and president of the Georgia NAACP, Gerald Griggs, to the show. Just want to, first of all, as a fellow civil rights attorney, say to you, thank you, Gerald, for taking this case on, for shining a light on it, and making stories like this, stories involving Black people, making this story so prominent. Let me ask you, we have all express so much empathy and sympathy for this family. How is the family doing right now?
Well, they're in a difficult position right now because they don't have answers to what happened. The GBI is not being as transparent as it should be. And that's why we at the Georgia NAACP through the Gwinnett County branch are pushing for them to release the entire case file, because we don't believe that this was simply a double suicide. These two young men were born and raised in Gwinnett County and Lawrenceville and found themselves up in Towns County on a mountain that is locked, dead from apparent gunshot wounds. And we find it very difficult to believe that these 19-year-olds, one of which who had a flight booked to go to Boston, would simply just leave that flight and go directly up to the mountains to shoot himself. So we want to have answers. We've seen some of the pictures that were released by the firefighter, unfortunately were released, and we see that there are some grave concerns. So one, we want the GBI to release the entire file. Two, we want the governor to order an independent investigatory panel to look into this death. And three, if there are any nefarious things that have happened in this case, we want someone prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because the family is sure that this smells like a cover-up. And Georgia has a history of this, whether it's Kendrick Johnson or it's Ahmaud Arbery. The initial story does not pass the smell test. It does not pass the smell test in this case.
And we know, Gerald, you've been involved with high-profile cases like the Ahmaud Arbery case and others. Why is it, though, that it takes so much, such a Herculean effort to get the media to focus on these cases when the victims in this case are Black people?
Well, the media doesn't focus on Black people when we need help. And so that's why it's incumbent upon platforms like this, Black media, to push the narrative. We have to look no further than Emmett Till. It took Black people exposing that atrocity to get the attention of the world. And so we must do it in this case. Back to what we saw in Scintilla Shores, that initial story was he was a burglar. It wasn't until the entire world saw the video that we started to get the truth. So in this particular case, we find it very difficult to believe that two 19-year-olds would travel 90 miles to a remote mountain in Towns County, the Pine Mountain in Hiawassee, where they've never been before, behind the locked gate, and execute themselves. That does not pass the smell test. So to answer your question, the media sometimes is not concerned enough about the loss of Black life. And that's why it's incumbent upon the Black community to show that concern.
And we know Dimitri said on the show before that when it is a mysterious Black death, we rarely get justice. We get stories, we get cover-ups. And so oftentimes it's the family having to hire a private attorney like you. It's the NAACP and it's private investigators that do that work to uncover what actually happened. Can you tell us in this case, is there a private investigator working with your firm or with the NAACP or the family to try to get to some of the details that are important to this case?
So, yes, we have our legal redress committee that's already investigating this case with other lawyers and investigators, but we need the investigatory file. And many times that's the holdup. When you have government entities that go ahead and rule something a double suicide, but then don't release the information so that we can do a thorough investigation. We found out from the family just a few days ago that many times in the investigation, they didn't pull all of the video. Georgia's equipped with Georgia Department of Transportation cameras, flock cameras, and of course you have the gas station surveillance cameras. So there should be a trail, an electronic trail that follows them all the way up to the mountain. We need to all that to be released so we can do a thorough independent investigation. But yes, we have investigators and attorneys on standby. And we must remember that in all of these cases, this is the purpose of the NAACP. One, Ida B. Wells was a prolific journalist of lynchings. And so we have to be the ones to investigate these mysterious deaths as we've done for 116 years.
I'm curious, Gerald, what information, if any, has the GBI given to the family that substantiates in the first place that these were suicides?
None. Absolutely none. And so that's the issue, the transparency, the accountability. If the GBI is truly an independent investigatory arm, let the family see all the evidence. Don't release statements to the press and then say, oh, by the way, the case is not closed, so we haven't turned anything over yet. And that's my issue with the GBI. I take that very seriously. If you're going to be an independent investigatory arm, you need to be transparent.
So Dr. B is not only the president of the NAACP in Los Angeles, she's also a psychologist. So Dr. B, weigh in on this story, because if this is suicide, ultimately, if that's where the facts lead us, how difficult is this going to be for the family to accept that both their sons committed suicide? And then what should we as a community do to help this family?
Yeah, Reva, I love that you mentioned suicide, because what stuck out to me that you said, Gerald, is for them to release information so that the independent investigators can take over and do a proper deep dive at investigating whether or not this is what it is. We know that law enforcement has been known for keeping information and prominent evidence from us, meaning the Black community, NAACP, so that we are unable to dive deeper into that. But to answer your question, Ariva, suicide is something that is again, it affects everyone, not just the folks who unfortunately take their life, but it affects the families long term. But then what we all tend to forget is that in addition to the families being affected, there is a community that look like us on here that do and are affected by every time somebody in our Black community commits suicide. We are all affected. It affects all of us as a community. It also puts all of us, I talk about secondary trauma all the time. It puts us in a place of having to experience and hear and see and be a part of secondary trauma. The third thing is called learned behavior. It teaches a really false narrative to our community, especially our Black boys. It teaches them that when times get hard, that suicide is a proper and okay way out, when it's not. It also continues to push the narrative that asking for help is weak, and that there is no help, and that that folks are not going to show up for you and help you process through this weight that you are carrying. And so when we look at it from a collective perspective, all of us are affected. And land on this. Suicide used to be a white thing, and I am at no way condoning suicide, because mental health is a human right. It's not a race right, it's a human right. But the fact that it is at an all-time high within the Black male community is heartbreaking, it's disheartening, and we do have to do much more as a community by standing up, by asking questions, by checking in with our brothers. By the way, this month, June, is Men's Mental Health Month. Why are we not bringing more awareness to Men's Mental Health Month? Why are we not making sure we're checking in with folks, especially our Black men, and saying, bro, are you okay? Do you need anything? What resources do you need? And really quick, when someone says they're not okay, and we see the signs, when someone says they are okay, and we see the signs that they're not, it is our responsibility as parents, as loved ones, and as community leaders to take that extra step to say, you don't seem to be all right. So I want to make sure I personally do a wellness check. I make a phone call to do a wellness check, or I give you the proper, necessary resources to make sure that you really are okay.
No, that's great advice. And thank you for reminding us that June is Male Mental Health Month. And we know in the Black community, it is taboo, too much negative stigma around talking about mental health issues. I do want to go back, though, Gerald, to the investigation, because there is some public information out there floating around on the internet that the twins Googled suicide and had bullets sent to their home. Have you been able to verify that? Is that just disinformation on the internet, or are you familiar with that? Help us understand what's going on with that information.
And so that's what I mean by the GBI not being transparent. You release press statements with some of the evidence, but don't release all of the evidence. And so, yes, it is in fact true based on their investigation that there was some indication that there was web traffic on searching for suicide and bullets. But they also didn't talk about that one of the twins had booked a flight to Boston to be with his girlfriend, was looking forward to that outing. So my question is, if you're using this particular evidence to substantiate your conclusion, why not release all the evidence so that independent investigators can get to the bottom of what actually happened? Don't smear the victim and not release the evidence.
And Dimitri, I want to ask you, you're not 19, but you're closer to that age than the rest of us. How does this hit for you when you hear a story like this? Two 19-year-old Black young men, and now this whole mystery around suicide versus murder-suicide versus potentially even murder. How is that hitting in the Gen Z community?
Man, it's not just only hitting in the Gen Z community. I think it hits home because I've admitted to mental health issues myself, attempted suicide here on Truth Talks. So it's a very sensitive subject for me. And I think the thing about it is, it's an honor to be speaking to you guys just at that. I just want to say the level of intelligence and what you guys do know. But I think for me, I know a lot of times we only speak from what we know, and I know we're trying to fight to get evidence out there. But to me, the silence around Black death, whether it is a suicide or it is not a suicide, seems more like a confession to me. It seems more like you guys know, and I'm solely speaking for my generation when we looking at it. It's not only that it feels like they're telling us it is a suicide. It feels like that's all we giving you, get over it. It feels like that's what they're telling us. And for me and my generation, who, as you guys say, like Dr. Brian implemented, it's become more of a mental health crisis these days than it's ever been for young Black men. And for us, this adds to it. It's not only that you feel like suicide is a valid option, but honestly, you start to feel like it's the only option because you go to your mom, you go to your dad, you go to people around you. And I'll be honest, excuse me for, getting a little emotional about it, but when you living in a space like that, And let's just say hypothetically, this was a suicide for these kids. It's not to my belief, but if we speaking on suicide, when you living in a space like that, even the slightest no can push you over the edge. Even the slightest, the slightest turn of what you needed. You may have just needed a hug, and not having that at that moment would push you towards that. And I'm solely speaking that because I'm hosting a few mental health events for young men here in Chicago. It's super, super personal to me. And this specific topic hits home. And I thank you for everything you guys are doing, especially surrounding this case in terms of bringing awareness to it. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Dimitri, for sharing, being honest, because we can't heal what we don't acknowledge. And heal and acknowledging that mental health issues exist in our community is definitely the first step towards healing. I do want to, Gerald, before we let you go, just ask, what do you think the GBI is hiding? We know that these investigatory bodies want to quickly close these cases, particularly when they start to get some media heat and when they see big time, big dog lawyers like you get involved. They want to shut this down as quickly as possible. But do you think this could be some kind of, white supremacist that's out, some kind of hate crime? Like what do you think could be behind the cover-up?
Not sure. And that's one of the main questions we want answered, because we do know there's a heightened climate of racial insecurity in this country, but particularly in this state, especially in that particular region of the state. And so we just want to make sure that there was no involvement of any of the known hate groups that are in this state, of the known white supremacist groups in this state, that there's no indication as any racial animus or attack that happened. You can't just close the book and say, oh, it was a double suicide when y'all thought it was a murder suicide from the very beginning. And so it's a lot of unanswered questions, which transparency from the GBI and an independent investigation can dispel. But Georgia has a long history of trying to sweep things under the rug. And we at the Georgia NAACP say, not on our watch, be transparent, release the entire file, and let the independent investigators determine what happened.
So, Gerald, obviously, we don't have any more information than what has been provided from the GBI and what we've heard from you. But if this is a murder, walk us through what happens next.
What happens next is it should go to the district attorney's office up there in Towns County in the judicial circuit there. And there should be another thorough investigation and a presentment to the grand jury, an indictment and a trial. But our hope right now is that we don't have to escalate this any further, because Georgia does have a mechanism where private citizens can bring forth a judicial investigation through a warrant application hearing. That's why we need the evidence, because, again, we only trust law enforcement as far as we can verify. And in this particular case, after 20 years of practicing law, I find it very difficult to believe that two 19-year-olds who know nothing about Pine Mountain would drive up a dark, winding road through a gate up to the mountains and kill themselves in a way where their bodies were placed in a way that the family believes was a sacrifice. And so there are a lot of facts that are starting to come out. Namely, both of them weren't the best of drivers. They get lost with directions and all these things, typically don't drive that far, and already had plans to go to Boston. So there are some serious concerns about what may or may not have happened. And that's why the family is pushing through the NAACP and all of their supporters for the GBI to be transparent. And the message to the GBI is this: if you have nothing to hide, why would you conclude the case as a double suicide but not release the file?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you with 100% certainty, we are feeling so much better having had this conversation with you, Gerald. This is a difficult case. It's a difficult case for our community, for our young people. But knowing that the NAACP of Georgia is on the case, knowing that you are on the case, give us hope that we are going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to find out what happened to these two young men. We're going to hold anyone accountable that had anything to do with the deaths of these two young men. We are going to stay on this story. It's an important story for our community. It's an important story for this show. But tell us, Gerald, before we let you go, what can we do? Is there a GoFundMe account? Is there a letter writing campaign? Are there calls that we need to make to the GBI? What can we do as a community to support you and to support this family?
All of those things. The family has set up a GoFundMe to support this case. The NAACP is calling on everybody concerned, both in the state of Georgia and outside, to put pressure on the GBI to be transparent and release the file. So you can call the GBI. There will be a change.org petition that will be going up very shortly. Just Google the names of Naadir and Qaazir Lewis and support the family. But most importantly, share this story. We are in a viral internet digital age. Share the story so we can bring awareness. That's exactly how we started to push to get justice for Ahmaud Arbery, is because of your viewers and others that stood on business and made sure that everyone knows that Black lives do matter and that we will hold accountable anybody who tries to neglect or take a Black life.
Gerald, before we let you go, I want to ask you what is going on with this family. We know that these cases can have a devastating impact on their mental health, on their physical health. So talk to us about what's going on with the family.
It's definitely a very trying time for the family. The father has had 5 strokes. And because of this particular case and the concern and the pain and the hurt, I think a lot of people miss the impact of what something like this does to a family, especially a close-knit family like the Lewis family. Other family members are dealing with other serious medical conditions. So we're hopeful that we can provide assistance to get them through this trying time and also take care of their health. But it's definitely a trying time for the family.
Again, thank you so much, Gerald. I can tell you our executive producer is on this story. She takes it very seriously. All of us, the hosts on this show, are with you. We share with you the commitment to find out what happened to these twins, and we will continue to watch this story very closely. We hope to have you back on a weekly basis to keep us updated. And again, to everyone watching this story, please share the story, go to the GoFundMe account, do what you can to help us get justice for the Lewis family.